Welcome, welcome, Elizabeth. It's great to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, I see the both your boats behind you, both of
Yes.
them, and it's great to have you here. That's part of your story. I saw that I want to really get into. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be here.
Hmm. Okay, so be fucking unstoppable. Like that's something. That's one of your mantras, if I could say that.
That's
Uh,
what I
what,
stand for.
what's that about?
Yeah, so Be Fucking Unstoppable is really at its core about being yourself and deciding that you're not going to live your life based off what society thinks, based off what your minister thinks, your mom thinks. It's
Mm,
about deciding that here, this piece inside of your solar plexus, right, where so many of us feel anxiety,
mm,
that you're going to prioritize feeling at peace and you're going to be relentless in the pursuit of a life that makes you feel like you're unstoppable, that there's nothing in your way that's going to keep you from living your dream life. As you can see, I live on a yacht now.
mm,
I own an international based company. I just sold my interests in a partnership that I started last year for a tech firm that's going to change how people engage in family law. There's nothing that I do in my life that is based off what other people think I should be doing. It's what feels right to me, what gives me a sense of excitement and peace here. And then I drive at that without any feeling of I need to make sure that other people approve of my choices. And to me, that's what being fucking unstoppable is saying, I'm going to back myself. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to decide that my vision for my life, God's vision for my life is what matters more than anyone else's opinion. And I'm just going to go for that all out.
mm. And it sounds like there was the point you had to come to a point where you consciously say, okay, I need to they say I need to change the approach. Like what led to that? Like what's the story behind of that?
The truncated story is I manifested my dream life
Mm,
that I had been told I should want based off the things that would make me worthy and socially acceptable. I grew up very chubby. I have a naturally very, I call it my Eastern European fro.
mm,
I have kinky hair. I was very outspoken. I was very liberal growing up in a village that's still incorporated as a village in West Ohio. And I felt like the things that were in my heart and the kind of person that I am, I'm bisexual, was not allowed. I was not allowed to be who I was. I was not allowed to have a lot of strong opinions about human rights. I grew up in a very conservative, I would say even violent culture. And for me, what I decided to do because I felt so out of place was to say, what is it that society needs me to do and be in order for me to feel acceptable and worthy? And I built a life based around that. I pursued a doctorate degree, which I'm very grateful for and I'm very happy. I love my field. I love what I chose to do with it. But when I was pursuing my education, it was very much around, is this going to make me worthy? Is this going to make me worthy? Is this going to make me worthy? I got married to my college sweetheart, not because we were a really good match, but because all of my other friends were getting married to their college sweethearts. And I was like, okay, I need a ring on my finger to prove that a man loves me and that that's good enough. And I became an executive director of an organization that I didn't really believe in the mission. I actually thought that it was problematic in a lot of ways, but I thought this is an opportunity for me to prove that I can do something meaningful. I can change this organization into something that I think it would be a very positive impact in West Baltimore where it was based. And for me, each time I made a choice based off of, I think this is a thing that will make me worthy, I gave up a little bit of my own identity. I chipped away at the things that I feel spiritually, emotionally, that I'm here to do with my talents. And I eventually reached a point where that was so uncomfortable and so unsustainable that I had an emotional breakdown. I would cry, falling asleep in my husband's arms every night, saying, "What if I never live as my full self? What if I'm never openly bisexual? What if I never share the things that are on my heart? What if I am too afraid to say the things that I believe in politically and about race-based politics and about equity and equality? What if I never give myself full permission to do that?" And I wake up at 95 years old really regretting it.
mm. Wow.
So that
And
was my story. And I decided from that point, give me one quick second. You need to go downstairs, okay? from school. So for me, that crisis of I have to choose to either continue to live my life this way for the next 6 decades, or I have to make really difficult decisions to leave my job, leave my marriage, divest myself of a house that I'm not going to be able to afford on my own, and then eventually restart my firm. I had started consulting when I was 24 for political and women-based advocacy, empowerment nonprofits. And I started that back up again, but with a real focus around working with entrepreneurs who were doing social engagement, social impact work.
Wow. So you started spiritual channel of the Da Vinci energy. What was that about?
So I've had a meditation practice for about 17 years now. And the more that I got quiet and let myself connect to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it, and the more that I became myself authentically, when I was working with clients one-on-one, so we'd be meeting the same way that you meet with any other coach or therapist, and I would start to have imagery that wasn't my own. So we'd be talking, you know, if you were my client, we'd be talking, and I would be like, oh, it feels like you're on this golden carousel and it's so beautiful, but you can't get off and it's just whirling faster and faster. And my clients would be like, yes, that's exactly what it is, right? And so I'd be having these images and having these words come that were, you know, I'm smart and I'm a great doctor, but I was not that smart, right? And so I started to get curious about that, and I started to talking to, instead of just coaches and other social psychologists, I started to talk to healers, and I was like, what's up with this? This is what's going on, and Googling around and getting curious and open-minded about the possibility that the spiritual world was also invested in what I was doing and the people that I was here to serve. And from that, I just really opened my mind to the possibility of getting guidance from a higher source, if you will. And I just started hearing language, not kind of like voices. I actually went and met with a psychiatrist. I was like, I don't think I'm schizophrenic, but this is what happens. I feel like I'm prompted to say words that aren't my own. And the more that I met with shamanic healers and other channels, they were like, yeah, you're a channel. You're speaking on behalf of unmanifested spiritual consciousness, which sounds weird, I know, and it is weird, but that's okay.
You're speaking on behalf of spiritual consciousness.
Yes, that's unmanifested.
That's unmanifested. Okay.
So we're all part of the spiritual world, right? But we're having a physical experience. We are spiritual consciousness that has chosen to come into the physical world. There's spiritual consciousness that is not incarnated, right? That is not having a physical experience. And I'm able to tap into a group that calls themselves the Da Vinci energy. They're very interested in how things work from an artistic as well as scientific standpoint. So a lot of my clients are visual artists, graphic artists, painters that are working with mediums where they feel like they're expressing something from a higher source, and they're putting it on a canvas or putting it on wood or sculpting it. Or I have a couple musicians. And then I have a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, and the information that I get from spirit is really about like, how do people put their companies together in ways that are more impactful, and people scale their companies very quickly when they work with me. People produce art that ends up selling for thousands and thousands of dollars when they start working with me. And it becomes this kind of tag team game that we're playing with the universe, where they're coming and they're saying, I don't know the next step, but I feel like you're the person that's going to be able to help me. And I'm like, great, let's jump in. And then we get guidance, right? That I've been a business consultant since I was 24. I'm almost 38. So for a long time, but again, as good as I am, like, I'm clearly getting an assist from a higher power.
So what do you help the people that come to you? What are the entrepreneurs, what about the coaches? The coaches is an industry that is fast growing. Do you attend, like, do you do anything with them, or are you open arms towards them?
Are coaches my clients, or my?
Would you open your hands? Like, would you be open arm towards coaches?
Yeah, I have 3 current clients who are coaches.
Yeah, coaches. Okay, so what are the entrepreneurs, coaches,
artists, and that,
whatever the musicians, however they come to you, what you help them do is you help them channel a higher consciousness where they can really tap into a certain ingenuity in their own work.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally what I help them do. So my training, I have a PhD in conflict resolution, a master's in sociology, and then I've done 2 different fellowships living in other countries, working with people going through different types of trauma. And so what I do when someone comes to me, you know, and I have people that aren't entrepreneurs, aren't artists, I have a couple authors, right? People that are creating things and they end up feeling very stuck, and they say, I know I'm supposed to be doing this thing, but what are people going to think if I go all in, right? This feeling of like, who do you think you are, right? Like I know I'm brilliant and I think I'm smarter than other people and I think I'm supposed to do this thing, but maybe people will get mad at me, maybe they'll think I'm cocky. And what I do, right, in the Da Vinci Energy working with us, like we clear away all of that. So we look at what is the childhood trauma that you went through, right? Whether that's something very intense and acute. I'm one of the few coaches that work on sexual violence, childhood sexual violence, child loss, molestation, rape. These are the background from my training and as a PhD. And I bring that into my work with entrepreneurs, my work with artists. So we're looking at what are some of the core memories that led you to feel like you're not worthy of achieving the things that God is putting on your heart, right? And we address that trauma. We use a number of different tools, whether it's channeling, whether it's very traditional talk therapy techniques. I'm also a big fan of EFT, which just stands for emotional freedom technique, which is a vague term, but it's tapping for people that know what EFT is. I use a lot of tapping. I use a ton of guided meditation. We work in the Akashic records. I have a huge tool bag. And when someone comes and presents to me and they say, you know, I want to be on the top 100 list for Amazon authors. This is really my goal and this is what I want to do. But if I do that, if I write this book and I say what I really want to say and just kind of let things flow, then my minister is going to think that I'm a harlot, right, for writing smut. Or I really want to launch a course on Akashic records healing, but my parents are deeply Catholic and they're going to think that it's too weird and I'm not allowed to do this, right? Or I really want to leave corporate and start my own company and this is what I want to do, but you know, this isn't how I was raised and I need to be much more careful because I have you know, a husband to support and kids and I need to really be safe, right? And so the fundamental thing that we're working on is, what do you feel afraid of, right? Whether it's being too visible, right? Being too big for your britches, or being financially unstable, right? We work on what are the core memories that led you to feel that way? How do we rewrite those memories, right? Use subconscious reprogramming, hypnotherapy, EFT, so that you can then go do whatever the fuck you want.
Okay, so part of what you do is removing the trauma.
Yeah, reworking it, right? Repositioning it.
Yeah, reworking that trauma, you know, so you know, to allow the flow, you know, so they can even flow within their own body and spirit. Now, after that is done, what happens next? Now we've walked through that. Now they're saying, okay, I'm fearless. I can do and be. Then what happens? What happens next?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it's important to recognize that trauma is never done. It's not a linear process, right? There's PTSD. Trauma lives in our body. When we have a traumatic experience, whether that's kind of small t trauma of you grew up in a household where you didn't feel approved of, or you know, you were molested when you were young, right? No matter what the event was, whether it was a series of events or something acute, when your nervous system encounters something traumatic, your nervous system actually changes. It becomes kind of in fight or flight mode. And we can rework some of that. We can address, you know, your nervous system level trauma. But if you encounter something that triggers that, you're going to go back into fight or flight mode, right? And so a lot of what I do is helping people have tools so that when their trauma is reactivated, they don't go spinning off into the ether and, oh my God, I'm going to go to bed for 17 weeks and, you know, my company is going to fall apart and blah, blah, blah. They're able to deal with it in the moment, understand that they're being triggered, get help, right? Whether it's coming back to me, working with someone else. But once we've done that, right, somebody's got a set of tools, they're able to move forward, they're clear on what their vision is, they're feeling fucking unstoppable. Then it's just a matter of saying, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What is it that you're feeling called to do? And how do we get you there?
Mm. Mm. Okay, so now first step, we eliminate or rework trauma, right? The second stage now,
Yep.
you know, we are equipped. Now we're equipped. We're equipped to overcome the trauma.
Yep.
You know, now the person goes, okay, now I'm fearless and I can even see the horizon. I can see how far I can go. I can see what's possible, and I think this is what I want. And now they can start dreaming from a fearless place.
Yeah.
So now they
Yeah.
come.
Or that the fear doesn't matter,
The
right? You
fear
can
doesn't
feel
matter.
the fear and do it anyway. We're human. There's never going to be a moment, I think, where fear's not a component of it, right? Like I bought my yacht. I bought it in cash. I bought it 6 weeks after relaunching my company. I felt very like juicy and like, yeah, I've got the money to do this, but that doesn't mean that I still don't have fear of financial insecurity pop up sometimes, but I don't let it dictate my choices.
Mm. Mm. Wow. So what happens after that? Now they have a vision. They say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish in the world. What happens after that?
We go for it, right? We weekly meet up and we're like, okay, you know, your dream is to start a fight club. I have a client that's starting a fight club. You know, your dream is to start a fight club. How are we going on that? What fear is coming up? Oh my gosh, you're looking at venues, right? You're you know, corporate spaces that you're going to lease and turn into a fight club. Okay, well, what fear is coming up now? Like, where are you feeling triggered that you're not allowed to move forward in this, right? And sometimes the answer is, you know, I'm really afraid of what my colleagues are going to think, or I'm really afraid of, you know, that this would be a thing that my parents wouldn't approve of, right? And so it's working through and saying, okay, like, you're moving forward in this way. What's stopping you at this juncture, right? Okay, and let's address that. Now you've moved forward here. What's stopping you at this juncture? Let's address that, right? And so it's just a matter of, I say it's evolving the quality of the suck, right? If we start down here, right? Dr. Liz, I'm coming to you because I was sexually assaulted 3 years ago and I don't know how to get over this, right? And I say, okay, well, right now the goal is to start to get out of bed every day. Okay, you're getting out of bed every day. Now the goal is to be able to go back to work, right? Okay, now you're going back to work. Now you understand you actually hate your job. Okay, great. Let's think about what it is that you really want to be doing. Oh, okay, you really want to establish a company doing this, right? And it's just a matter of up and up and up and up.
Okay, so as far as we can see, we go. Then as far as we can see, we go. And as far as we can see, we go. Then what about the other stuff about, you know, tapping into consciousness and, you know, establishing that communication? What about that? Like, how does that play into their greatness?
Yeah, it's kind of like this. So instead of just you and me sitting, right, if you were my client, you and me having this conversation, but we're also calling in like your spirit guides. We're calling in the Da Vinci energy. So instead of just you and me having a conversation, it's all of us sitting around a kitchen table. And you're saying, all right, this is the problem, right? Set it on the kitchen table. And now we're all talking about it and thinking about how to solve it.
You bring a whole squad of team with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, if you're coming from a Judeo-Christian background, right, you can think about this as you're tapping the Holy Spirit and you're calling in angels, right? If you're coming from a kind of universalist standpoint, you're thinking of it as spirit guides. If you're coming at it from a standpoint of I'm an atheist, you know, we're just saying, like, can we be more open-minded to creative inspiration, right? Like, you don't have to buy into this is, you know, this is unmanifested spiritual consciousness. There's so many different faith traditions that give us opportunities to think about the possibility that we don't have to solve things on our own, right? And so it's just an openness and willingness to say, all right, it's me and you having a conversation, but are we open to the possibility that we don't have to figure this out on our own?
Yes. And allowing all of that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so instead of me, you know, your problem opportunity, right? You've come in and you're saying, you know, I really want to invest in a 15th company, but my parents think that that's being ostentatious, right? Or you just had some new photos taken, because I love your Instagram, right? You just had some new photos taken and you're really nervous about your girlfriend's opinion because she's going to think that too many women are going to comment on it, right? I don't want you to, right?
Yeah.
And so we'd come into the room and we'd say, okay, you know, well, here's the issue. 1 second. Bed, my child is destroying our house while we're having this interview. So we'd come into the room and we'd say, oh, my girlfriend doesn't want me to post these because she's so afraid all these other women are going to come out, right? And we'd say, okay, let's come into the room and talk about that, right? And then we're just being open-minded and saying, you know, what I'm really feeling the possibility is you guys could have a conversation about this and ask her, you know, what things can I be doing to help you feel reassured, right? Is it spending 2 minutes every night snuggling and reminding you that you're my one and only and I love you more than anything, right? Is it blocking the comments so that no one's able to comment, right? Like, and as we're having this conversation, it's incumbent upon me to be open-minded to suggestions where I feel inspired to say this and inspired to say this, instead of being like, well, let me go back to my textbooks from graduate school. I didn't learn this suggestion as a social psychologist, so I probably shouldn't say it, right? It's like being willing to be open-minded to the possibility that inspiration comes from places other than formal training, right?
Wow. That's beautiful. That's a gift.
It is a gift.
How did you hone that? You know, you were saying something about how, you know, you had to see, you know, shamans. You had to, you had to consult with, you know, am I am I okay? This is good. So how did you deal with that? How did you?
I mean, it was really hard, to be honest. I came out of the closet as a lesbian. A whole different story. I had to walk it back and was like, no, I was wrong. I'm really bisexual. But when I came out,
okay, 1 second. So
you're like, wait a second, pause.
So you came out as a lesbian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew I was bisexual. I knew I was bisexual. That was never a question to me. But the church that I grew up in, like, it was not allowed, right? I was broken, I was a sinner. And so like 8 people knew that I was bisexual. And when I was in the process of realizing that I needed to end my marriage, my ex-husband is a good friend of mine still. And I would cry at night, falling asleep in his arms saying, what if I actually never sleep with a woman? What if this is just hypothetical? And I am 95 years old and I figure out that I never lived as my true self. Like, what am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And after that marriage ended, I started sleeping with women and I was like, a whole new world. This is who I'm meant to be. It's amazing what sex will do, right? And I felt very uncomfortable not speaking that publicly. It felt very inauthentic. Hang on 1 second.
Show that again?
Oh, yeah. Hang on.
All right. What's your son? I thought he was on a dock playing somewhere.
Yeah, he's got a squirt gun and he's playing on the dock after I said not to. So, okay. So I felt what had happened was a friend of mine who's a minister in the culture that I grew up in a very small culture in Ohio. His daughter came out of the closet and I felt, as someone who tries to live authentically and inspire others to do the same, I felt like if this teenager has the courage to be themselves and I'm still in the closet, I'm a fraud. I'm abdicating my responsibility as a leader to not have the courage to stand up and say, this is who I am, because I'm afraid of what other people will think. And at the time that I was feeling that and processing that and praying about it and meditating and crying a lot, I it felt very true to me that I was a lesbian. I was very convinced that I was never going to be able to love a man the way that I could love women, not just sexually, right? But in all the ways. And I came out publicly. I came out on my podcast and I shared what was going on, and I shared about the journey. And before I came out on my podcast, I came out to my family. And it was really painful. It was really hard. And then, fast forward several months and doing a lot of meditation and work on myself and really becoming clear on the things that I was still holding on to that were keeping me small, keeping me stuck in a narrative, as opposed to open to the possibility that I'm here to do whatever it is that God says. I met and fell in love with my fiance, and it was it was kind of this moment of like, shit, do I like have a big public pronouncement as like, asterisk, you remember how I came out as lesbian? And I'm really, turns out I still like the dick from time to time, and I fell in love with this one. Not just the penis, the whole person. Right? And so now it's a component of the story of the next thing to do is to speak your truth in that moment and to not worry about what the future looks like. Like none of us have a guaranteed future, right? Like my partner and I were supposed to get married 2 weeks ago, and instead 6 weeks ago he was diagnosed with cancer, and we're day to day living the next thing that's the right thing to do. We can't get wrapped up in what does the future look like 5 years from now. And I think if humanity has learned anything from the pandemic, hopefully it's that we don't need to spend a lot of time being worried about what's going to happen next, because the future is going to take care of itself. We're going to have more information.
What's going to happen is going to happen. Yeah.
What's going to happen is going to happen, right? And the thing that we need to meet each moment is courage to be authentic, right? Courage to be willing to do things a different way. Like when the pandemic started, my son really needed me in a way that those are cookies. My son needed me in a way that I couldn't be present for him and be a coach in-house at a law firm. I was still a coach, but I was coaching in somebody else's company, right? And my son needed me to be more present with him than I could be working for someone else. And my financial freedom, I wanted that to look different than it did working for someone else, right? And having courage in that moment to say, I don't know what's going to happen. The world looks totally different than it did on March 12th. But I'm going to have courage to be authentic in this moment and saying, I'm not being the kind of parent I want to be right now. I'm not having the kind of financial freedom I want to experience right now. I can't have a business plan that's 6 years into the future because no one knows what the fuck is going to happen in July. So I'm just going to have to trust that the feeling here of confidence in myself, even though there's fear, being unstoppable has nothing to do with being fearless. It has everything to do with courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to take the next step, even though you're fucking scared.
And that ties into your core message. We're talking about that off camera. What's the message?
Be yourself, even when it's scary. The only thing that you need to do in each moment is to have the courage to be authentic, right? And if that means you come out of the closet, you come out of the closet. If that means you start your own company because you think that, I don't know, I was putting mascara on earlier, right? Like you think that mascara should be made without being tested on bunnies, right? You start a cruelty-free mascara company, like whatever it is that you feel called to do, that you feel the universe, God, whatever has put a calling on your heart, the idea that you cannot stop thinking about, even at 2 a.m, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if, right? It's having courage to meet that opportunity and saying, I'm willing to step up to the plate and swing. And clearing away any debris, any trauma, any feelings of people pleasing, any feelings of being beholden to someone else's vision, right? Like, when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Like from age 5, I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. In undergrad, I joined the pre-law fraternity. I'm going to be a lawyer. 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 Right. And then my then husband went to law school, and I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. This is a really limited framework. There's no space for creativity. There's no space to color outside the lines. This is not who I am. Right. And so I applied and got into a PhD and got a full ride to go study conflict resolution. Right. And I lived all around the world. I've lived in 4 countries. I've studied trauma from a number of different lenses. Right. At no point was I like, 5 years from now, I want to be a Department of Education fellow and go live in Moscow and study cross-comparative politics and public policy related to rape in Moscow. Like, there was no plan. There was just, hey, there's a grant from the US Department of Education. I think you should go for it. It'd be really cool. Do you want to? And me being like, I mean, I don't know that I want to move to Moscow, but that feels interesting. That feels exciting. That feels juicy. I call it juicy pussy energy. Feels juicy, right? And having courage to go for it, even though you don't know what the next step is. There's no need for you, for anyone, my core message, there's no need for you to spend any time trying to predict the future. All you have to do is follow the inspiration that's on your heart and have the courage to show up for it. And the rest sorts itself out.
Wow, great. And for those, like, how does it working with you? How does that work?
The practicalities of it.
Oh no, like the practicality. The like, if I wanted to work with you, like, what needs to happen?
You send me a DM, which is just soul.dr.liz. So Soul Dr. Liz. On Insta, or you reach out to me on Facebook, which is just Elizabeth Degi DuBois, DEGI, then DUBOIS, or you send an email to drlizdubois@gmail.com. And we get in touch and we jump on a call like this and we talk about what's going on and we say, all right, this sounds like a good fit, or this doesn't feel like a good fit. Here's 3 colleagues that I think would actually work better for you. And then we go from there.
All right. Thank you very much for coming today, sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Your breakout into being your authentic self, all of your authentic self, and for some of us, like, we might think we are authentic, but there might be that one thing that we might be pushing away. And it's all about, your message really about embracing all of who you are and being, courageously.
And if you lean into that one thing, I call it the squirmy thing, right? The thing that makes you squirm a little when you think about being public about it. If you lean into that, whatever is on the other side of your squirmy thing is the person who you're really here to be. And if you can accept that part of you, embrace that part of you, ask that part of you what it needs to feel whole and recognized and healed, you'll have more energy, right? Because you're not pushing away a part of yourself, but you're actually going to figure out who you really are. Right. Which is the bravest thing we can do. When I was in the process of leaving my marriage and realizing I needed to come out of the closet and wanted to be more creative in my professional life than I felt able to do when I was working for other people, I remember thinking to myself, like, what if I figure out that I don't really like myself? Like, I know I'm not being myself right now. I know I'm putting on the costume that society says I need to be in order to be worthy. I get that that's what I'm doing and I'm willing to stop doing that. But what if the person that I find out I am, I actually, like, she's not good enough? What if she's really not worthy, right? That's a scary thing to confront, right? If you've been raised in a culture that tells you the way to be good enough is to be compliant, to get straight A's, to be, a size 2, to be straight, to get married, to do all these things, right? If you decide I'm going to play by society's rules because that's what I'm supposed to do, and you find out you're actually, I call it the oh fuck now what moment, like, oh fuck, I'm super unhappy, now what, right? Like, you have in that moment a decision to make, which is I'm going to figure out who the fuck I am and be brave enough to live as that person, or I'm going to continue to play by the rules and be a little bit miserable. And if someone can have the courage to say, I'm going to strike out on my own and figure out what my own rules are, That's what being fucking unstoppable is. It's a willingness to say, I'm going to back myself, even though other people might not get it.
Wow. And thank you very much for doing for the work you do. Amazing work. But I mean, for some people, they might say it's easy for you to say. I mean, you can talk to all of these entities, you know. I mean, what about me? I mean, I can barely even talk to my partner, right? So like, what?
Well, then you need to work with me so we can work on your communication skills and uncover whatever trauma it is that you're afraid to speak your truth to your partner. But anyway, that's a tangent. You know, we all have the ability to tap into something greater than ourselves. The biggest lie that Western culture teaches us is that we have to do it on our own, right? And we don't. That was never the plan. That was never the goal, right? And every faith culture on the planet speaks to that, speaks about, you know, a peace that we cannot give ourselves, right? Speaks to a Holy Spirit or an inner knowing. And everyone has the ability to access that because we're all part of it, right? Like if God is everything, we're part of that everything. And that means you have access to that wisdom. It means you have access to that peace. And the way to tap into it is to simply be quiet. It's to sit for 15 minutes every morning. I stand right here on this little ugly bench, right? I stand on that bench every single morning and I open my arms wide up and I say, my highest purpose, not my fear be done, right? Which is another kind of like, thy will, not mine be done. That's a little too Christian for me, right? So I just say my highest purpose, not my fear be done. Whatever it is that I'm supposed to do today, give me the courage and willingness to do that. And then I sit on the same ugly bench for 15 minutes. I stick earbuds in and put on a YouTube meditation song. And I just sit there. And then I sit down and I'm like, all right, now that I've tuned in, I put my little to-do list for the day. And then I just do it as I feel inspired, right? I'm like, okay, all right, now it's family time. Now it's create a graphic for a podcast. Now it's dry my hair, right? You know, and it doesn't have to be a like, now I light 1,000 candles and go to church and say a bunch of prayers. It can be right now, the thing that I'm supposed to do is to work on this, I don't know, whatever graphic for, I'm hosting a happy hour later today. I need to work on this graphic, but I'm actually feeling overwhelmed with exhaustion, right? That's my human being like, no, you have to sit down and do this work. And it's my highest self being like, you need a fucking nap, right? Like lie down for 20 minutes because you've got this event tonight, right? And it's being willing to listen to that still small voice instead of the like societal program, like it's a work, like this is between the hours of 9 to 5, you need to work, as opposed to my body, which is like, you need a fucking nap before you host this event tonight.
Okay. Well, it's great to have you here.
Thank
We've
you.
gone forever. This is such an amazing topic. I want to even dive into tapping, and you talk about tapping. Actually, if you could talk a little bit, share a little bit about tapping. What's that method about? Like, you know.
Yeah. So I said briefly. Can we hit pause for 1 second on the recording?
Yes. So tapping.
Okay. So I referenced before, trauma lives in your body. Trauma is simply your nervous system's pre-programmed response to something that feels like a threat. So our nervous system is not designed to deal with modern life. It is designed to deal with saber-toothed tigers and hunting woolly mammoths. So the reason we feel uncomfortable when we're doing something outside the box is because we are programmed to fit into society, because our biology knows we cannot hunt a woolly mammoth by ourselves. We have to be part of a tribe. And so when we do something that rubs people the wrong way, it feels very uncomfortable because we're going against the grain and we're like, biologically, your nervous system is saying, oh my God, we're going to get kicked out of the tribe. Then we're going to starve to death. Right. And when we have something that feels like a threat, right? I don't know, pick something, right? Like we lost our job, right? We lost our job. Feels like a threat. Your nervous system is not saying, well, I have $17,000 in my TD Ameritrade account, and I've got this IRA that I could liquidate, and I've got 3 people that I can call to get a job, and that, right? Your nervous system is not able to do all that calculation. Your nervous system is saying, we're going to starve to death. Oh my fucking God, because it's programmed to deal with intense, immediate threats, saber-toothed tigers, right? And so your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze, or just go, ah! Or we lash out, right? It's just your biology being like, this is the responses I have. I only know a couple of tricks, and it's flight, flight, or freeze. When we have something traumatic happen to us, especially when we're young, 0 to 7, when our subconscious is really being formed, it's kind of like your nervous system takes a Polaroid picture, snapshot of that moment, and it says, this is what the very worst thing feels like. And then anytime, because you can't unscramble that egg, anytime you encounter something that even remotely triggers that, your nervous system waves that feeling in front of your face like a Polaroid picture and be like, do you remember how bad this was? Right? And so let's say hypothetically, somebody's married and their mom left when they were really, really, really young, after the kid heard a fight about money, right? Every time that person has a conversation about money with their spouse, that trauma is going to be triggered. So instead of having a conversation about, oh my gosh, there's a gas shortage, we need to fill up both cars, it's going to be $80, but we hadn't budgeted that much. Instead of having a conversation about that, their nervous system is saying, if we have a conversation about this, we might end up getting divorced. And so you're not able to respond to the conversation in the moment and say, okay, well, we were going to go out to dinner for pizza tonight, but since there's a gas shortage, let's make dinner at home and fill up the cars. Your nervous system is going, oh my God, if we have a conversation about this, my wife is going to leave and then I'm going to be alone forever, right? Like, and so what tapping does is it reconciles those feelings. It gives your body a way to move those feelings out, so that you can have the actual conversation you need to have. So you can take the action you need to take. Right now in the US, a lot of business owners were applying for the payroll protection plan, the PPP loans, right? If someone believes inherently that they do not deserve to have a company, to have a good company, right? Because their parents said, well, money doesn't grow on trees and you need to have a secure job. And, you know, I'm a preschool teacher and that's the right way. Or like my dad's side of the family, my grandmother, like every woman in that side of the family has been nurses. Like generationally, they've been nurses. I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years. So every 2 years, I have a different business card, right? That side of my family thinks I'm crazy, right? They think
every 2 years I have a different business card.
Right. Because they're like, she's so unstable. Like what, right? Because their idea of the right way to have a job is you retire from the same job that your great grandmother retired from, right? That to me feels like death. I cannot imagine having to do the same job for 5 years in a row. I'm very smart. I would lose my fucking mind, right? I like to problem solve. It would not work for me, right? But for me to be able to for me to go visit my relatives and then be like, you have another new job, right? I'm like, I don't have another new job, dummy. I have another new company, right? But if I'm coming from a space of, it's dangerous to own a company and you don't deserve to have this and blah, 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 blah. And there's a global pandemic and the president makes it possible for you to apply for a loan. If deep down inside your trauma says it's not safe to have a company, you're going to have a hard time applying for that PPP loan. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to do all this stuff. And then you're going to go to your therapist and you're going to say, I'm self-sabotaging. No, you're not. You're fulfilling the programming that you were told as a child you should do, right? This is the way the world works and you have to do it this way. So even though your grown-up entrepreneur brain is like, I need to do the PPP loan, your little kid brain is going, this is an opportunity for me to be good again. I'm going to stop having a company. I'm going to end up in a position where I have to go get a job because then I'll be good, right? Both of those conversations are happening at the same time. Your grown-up frontal lobe is like, I gotta do this application. Your little kid loan is, this is an opportunity to get love from my family, right? And so what tapping does is it reconciles those. And so when you're working with me and you do it, what we're doing, instead of saying like all this bullshit fucking affirmations, right? I deserve to have a successful company. I have a millionaire mind. Like your little kid self does not believe any of that. And so what a lot of coaches do, what a lot of therapists do, is they tell you to do all these affirmations and do all this meditation. And then one day magically you'll like have this fucking beautiful company. You won't, because you are never going to be able to transcend that trauma voice unless you listen to it. And so the way that I use EFT tapping is that we acknowledge all of those stories. We let that part of ourself be heard and seen and validated, right? So that when we are in a position to then move forward, right? I tap almost, I don't know, 4 times a week, right? I'm calling in a new client right now. I really want to work with another person. I really want to work with another high-level CEO. Really want to help somebody solve some problems over the summer, which is kind of a weird time right now because of the pandemic. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I want to be somebody's ride or die right now, right? I want to bring on a new client. I've got a space open. It sounds really fun. And so this morning when I was tapping, I was not just saying like, I'm ready to serve a new client. I'm ready to be in partnership with someone. I'm ready to help them expand their company. I'm ready to help them see themselves as unstoppable. Before I said all of that, I was tapping and saying, I'm really scared that I don't have enough time for a new client. What if a new client thinks that I'm really disorganized because my partner has cancer and my kid is at home, blah, 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 right? Instead of being like, none of those things matter. I'm a great coach. I'm going to affirm myself. I was letting the part of myself that's scared feel seen and heard. Right? And that's all humans really want. We want to be validated. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And so the way that people work with me when tapping is one of the tools we use, it's not the only thing I use. I have a huge tool bag. I trained for 9 years. I'm a doctor, right? When someone's working with me, we're not gaslighting that scared part of you into being like, fucking get on board. We're gonna make $1 million this year. It's gonna be great, right? This is why so many entrepreneurs stay broke forever. They think that the way to have, right, like a $1 million company is like, well, I need to dress for the job I want, right? And so they go and they lease a really expensive car and they do all this crazy shit, right? Because they're like, well, I need to surround myself with high vibration. I need to go do this, right? Like my favorite place to eat, I've lived in Washington, D.C. and around the area for 19 years. Like my favorite place for dinner on a Friday night is the Ritz-Carlton in Georgetown. I fucking love it, right? But like there have been times in my entrepreneurial journey where having dinner at the Ritz-Carlton was, I'm going to get a $5 pot of Earl Grey and like a $17 appetizer, right? And then there's been times in my entrepreneurial journey where dinner at the Ritz-Carlton is, I'm going to have $300 fucking shellfish plus blah, blah, blah and dessert, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Perfect. When we are humble enough, open enough, courageous enough to listen to the part of us that is afraid of success, we can move through that fear very quickly. Tapping's a tool to help us do that. When we are drinking the Kool-Aid of high performance culture that says, get up and eat success for breakfast, get up at 4:30, work out for 17 hours, and then you're gonna journal, and then you're gonna meditate, and then you're gonna have a staff meeting, and you're gonna hype everybody up, and then you're gonna go for a run because you're gonna do Ironman because, you know, whatever, all top performers get up at 5 a.m., right? Like that Kool-Aid of high performance entrepreneurial culture, that's real, right? But you also see a lot of
performance culture.
But people stroke out, right? When you look at, you know, in my mind, like the people that I want to be like the most are Richard Branson and Elon Musk, right? They are disruptive leaders. They give zero fucks, right? Elon Musk is a total fucking pothead, right? Like when I think about the kind of impact that I want to have as someone that works with entrepreneurs and the kind of lifestyle I want to have, those are my two North Stars that I'm going towards, right? Like when we are thinking about who I want to be, how I want to be in the world, what I want to leave when I die, right? I think it's really, really important to look to a couple people and say, that's a prototype. That's what I'm shooting for. Not, you know, like I never want to own a car company, right? I don't ever want to work in like have an airline company, but I want to be courageous. I want to be bold enough to be an interrupter. I want to be smart enough to know that I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. I can be a little bit of a pothead if I want, right? That's not really my bag, but right, we have great examples of people in this culture who strike out and do things differently. They don't drink the Kool-Aid. They're not just sheep following along and doing whatever, right? But when you don't have the tools to acknowledge the parts of you that are saying, no, we have to be like everyone else, or maybe it won't work, you end up in this kind of like spin. You're pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. And what tapping does for us is it helps us hit the brake, acknowledge what's going on, lift our foot up, and then hit the gas.
Okay, so tapping, you tap for the fears.
You tap for the fears, and then you tap into what you want. So if we were to say, I don't know, give me a problem you're working on.
Oh man, problems. I would love for helping.
You have no problems.
That's interesting. The problem. I can't think of any right now. What would be a common problem?
A common problem. Let's talk about vacation. So common problem for entrepreneurs, common problem is I can't go on vacation. I have too much to do, right? And so what we would do instead of like standing in the mirror and saying like, I deserve to go on vacation, I deserve a day off. What we would do is we would tap and we would say, if I go on vacation, my business is going to fall apart. If I don't have 400 alarms set, I'm going to forget something, right? If I go on vacation, my business is going to fall apart. My clients aren't going to get what they need. Everything is going to fall to shit. People are going to think I'm lazy. Nobody's going to respect me. People are going to see my Instagram and they're not going to want to work with me because they're going to feel like I'm too busy fucking around on an island instead of prioritizing my clients. Even though that's what I'm thinking, even though that feels true, people really admire people that can take the day off. My clients believe that it's important to have work-life balance. The people that I like to work with respect me as a human. The people that I like to work with understand that I need time off. When I take time off, it helps my clients because I have more creative bandwidth, because I feel well rested, because I'm not stressed out. It's important for me to take time off. I'm a better coach when I take vacation. When I take vacation, it helps the people I serve. The people I serve want me to be well rested. I owe it to my clients to be well rested. I feel well rested when I go on vacation. I owe it to my clients to take some time off. I owe it to my clients to take vacation. I deserve to go on vacation. It helps the world when I am well rested. I'm willing to see this from a different perspective. I'm willing to accept the possibility that me going on vacation is helpful, right? And we would just soften the story, and pivot to a place where you're like, fuck yeah, I'm booking my plane ticket to Cancun. I'm gonna have sex on the beach all week, right? Yeah. And like move through the feeling.
Move through the fears, move through the, and it's interesting because in the sales part of our program, the Client Getting Academy on building a business, the sales part, one of the things we start to talk about is don't ignore the negatives. Like the person standing, for example, they've never seen your stuff before. Let them know, like, look, you probably think I'm trying to get your money, like, because you cannot implant a negative. But if the negative was there before, there would be a chance, like, even if there's no empathy will happen. Like they would be like, oh, he gets it. And that alone, that connection alone could be where the beliefs are established.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the most important thing, right? This is about be fucking unstoppable, like gaslighting people and saying that like this isn't really a thing, like that's gonna stop you, right? Like it's gonna stop you. People can smell phonies, people can smell desperation, right? Like right now I have, adding it up, $33,000 of pending business, right? Where people said yes, but they haven't paid the invoices yet, right? Like I could be emailing them every day and being like, when is this coming in? 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 Right? And like, I wouldn't work with a coach who was like that, right? Like I would be like, am I paying your fucking bills? If I like, do you not have other clients? Right? What is this? Like, people smell desperation, right? It's not on my clients to solve my financial stability, right? It's on my clients to be aware of what their limitations are and what it is that they need, right? Or at least be able to articulate, like, there's a problem. They don't know. Often people come to me because they don't know what they need, right? They're like, I've done therapy for 15 years and I'm still self-sabotaging and I don't know how to deal with this, right? They don't know what they need, but I do, right? That's the expertise. But if I go into that conversation saying, well, I'm an expert and don't worry about it. You just, tell me all of your innermost feels, tell me all of the bad things that happened to you, and then I'll be able to fix it. Right. Like that's a very different conversation than I hear that you're in pain. I hear you're really frustrated. I hear that all of the things that you've done that the traditional therapy models told you to do aren't working and that you're feeling really desperate. I have a lot of clients that have felt that way. Would you like to hear about the kind of work that I do that may be able to help? If it resonates with you, this might be a good path to try. Do I have your permission to tell you a bit more? Right? As opposed to, don't worry, I work with that all the time. We're going to solve it. I understand that something horrible happened to you, but don't worry, you're in good hands. Let's go. Right? Like one of those is an honest conversation that dignifies what someone's been through. One of those is a sales conversation. Yes. My goal when I'm working with an entrepreneur whose sales is a component of their work is to get them to understand that both of these are sales conversations. But one of them acknowledges humanity and the other one just says, I want your money.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you really hit on that. So you tap from the negative into the positive.
Everything, whether it's my motto, be fucking unstoppable, whether it's some of the techniques like tapping, all of it comes down to, are you willing to be honest about who you are? Right? Who I am, right? At my core, sometimes who I am is a person that thinks right now my story is I'm too fat to be successful, right? Like I have to be a size 4. I was a model for a long time, and in the pandemic I've gained some weight, right? But I was a model because I was anorexic, right? Part of my truth is I deserve to eat food. Right? But sometimes those things collide, right? And because I'm not a size 4 model anymore, like maybe that means people won't find me credible, blah blah blah, right? Like I could spend a lot of time and energy gaslighting myself, saying I deserve to be successful at any weight, right? Or I could say I'm really embarrassed and ashamed that I've gained weight. I feel really sad about myself when I look in the mirror. I really am worried that people are going to find me uncredible, right? And then I pivot and I say, even though those are things that I feel are true, when I look at Oprah, I don't see a size 4 model, right? When I look at Brene Brown, I don't see a size 4 model. When I think about the kind of people that have really changed my life, none of, like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, like they're not models. And I'm reminding myself of the possibility that I could see things differently if I choose to, right? But it has to start with acknowledging that the feeling is there.
Well, thank you very much. That was a lot of sharing value you shared. It's interesting that you also said that we had Mrs. Canada Classic 2020. She came on the show and she also said something in that ground that the most depression is that is found is mostly in women after a certain point, because now they think, now what, the one thing that I was told to protect and that's my leverage in this world, that's my now okay, so now what else do I have? She said that that's when most people find themselves or just completely lose themselves. So it's great. Thank you very much for sharing your story, and
you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.